Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com through the KSGF app. Also, video, that is on YouTube. You can find us. What do they just search? 104, Springfield's Talk 1041.
I think you can look up either or, and it should
Either or. And find the program there and watch things stream. We are slated to talk with Congressman Burleson just after the top of the 7 o'clock hour, I do believe. And we'll get the latest, when it comes to the budgeting issues and the cuts, and he, of course, on the Doge committee. But you get these reports, well, the Senate passed this, but then the House doesn't like that, and then the House did, and there was a holdout, and then the holdout gave in. And so it can become, particularly the way that the media reports on this stuff, difficult to figure out who's winning in all of this. Is it the taxpayer that wants these long-term, put as permanent as can be, meaningful cuts that are actually going to get us on the right track? Or is it the Republicans that want to look like they're that, but at the same time they're still managing to throw money around to interested parties and sort of do the Doge cuts in as virtue signaling, but nothing that is going to take away their ability to continue to use our tax dollars in ways that are beneficial to them? Are they the ones? Is it the establishment winning, which I know they dovetail largely? So we'll get Congressman Burleson's assessment on that. He's been very consistent in his push with largely the Freedom Caucus, but there are others outside the Freedom Caucus as well that have noted that this is beyond Doge. We have to get some of these problems under control. Medicaid is a big one, and the way that Congressman Burleson has explained it, under Obama in particular, Medicaid got expanded to cover people that it was never meant to cover, so that people who are perfectly able-bodied individuals, oftentimes men in their 20s or 30s, that they're able to work, but they just don't want to. They just don't want to. That you and I as taxpayers end up carrying them. And that was something that, again, expanded massively under the Obama administration. And it worries me whenever there are some Republicans that go out there and they're like, don't worry, the one thing, we will not cut anyone's benefits on Medicaid. Well, you know how many people are on Medicaid that should not be on Medicaid? Back in the 90s, even Democrat, now it was because of Newt Gingrich and the pressure from Republicans and the contract with America, but the welfare to work rules that were put into place, and to a large degree, it wasn't the most difficult thing to get around, but it was an acknowledgement, a bipartisan acknowledgement, that there were a lot of people on welfare that could work. They just chose not to because, hey, why should I have to work if somebody's going to send me a check for doing nothing? And when it comes to the issue of that expansion in the past generation or so of Medicaid, it's done the same thing. It's covering people that don't need to be on it. And this idea that we're not going to cut anyone's benefits, there are a lot of people whose benefits should be cut because they should not be on it. They are just as capable of working as you and I. So anyhow, that is really the foundational problem here when it comes to much of the so-called entitlement spending. Congressman Burleson, again, we'll get the latest from him on that. Last week or a week and a half, it was announced, we had talked about it, as had so many others, that Kid Rock arranged a dinner meeting between Bill Maher and Donald Trump at the White House. And it happened the weekend before last, or sometime around there. But it wasn't until this past Friday night that Bill Maher had his live show subsequent to that event. And he in his monologue talked about it. And I'm going to play it in its entirety because, one, I find it very interesting, and I think you will as well. But two, Bill Maher's approach on this whole thing, I think, is a large solution to so many of the problems that we have in this country. Now, the problem, of course, is and he alludes to it. The problem is with the left in this country. It isn't the Trump supporters when it comes to all the nastiness and the divisiveness. And of course, he's catching massive heat because he didn't come out saying Trump is this horrible, awful individual. In fact, his take on Trump as a person is, I think, it's very insightful, and I think it's very beneficial to the country to hear somebody like Bill Maher, who thinks Donald Trump is, on the verge of a dictator in terms of policy, but recognizing who he is as a person and how different that is from what the left has been trying to craft as they continue to basically try and win elections by just demonizing the opposition as inherently evil. Instead of talking and leading on policy issues, it is about they are evil, they're bad, and if you support them, you're Nazis. So we'll have that coming up as well. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk at text line 447 KSGF. If you want to send in any text messages, feel free to do so. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 71.
Bill Maher finally tells all about his meeting at the White House with President Trump. Bill Maher, well-known leftist, and for reasons that we'll talk about coming up, there are a lot of people that aren't on the left that still have a degree of interest in what it is that he has to say, and I think it's because he, for me anyhow, he is somebody on the left that is in the minority any longer, and that is they have their own original thoughts, and they can articulate those original thoughts, and they don't believe, he doesn't believe, simply because you have a different set of beliefs, be it conservative or MAGA, that means that you're a horrible person inherently. And increasingly, that is why he has become marginalized within the Democrat Party, because they have begun, or they have evolved into a party that isn't based off of ideals or issues, but based off of we're the good guys, everyone else is the bad guy. You cannot talk with the bad people. You can, and it does operate like a cult. I know both sides like to point to the other and say, oh, they're a cult. No, they're a cult. But when you look at the behavior and the expectations of the left, it is similar to a cult. You don't talk to outsiders. Outsiders are dangerous. Outsiders are going to poison your mind. Anyone within our own cult that starts asking questions, they have to be ousted. They've got to be kicked out because they're dangerous. And that is how the left behaves when it comes to the country today and political opposition. And Bill Maher is, again, increasingly in the minority within the Democrat Party. He is not that way. But he's clearly politically in opposition to Trump. He and Trump have gone back and forth, barbing one another for some time. And so this invite to the White House by Kid Rock, I mean, only Trump world could even craft the stage as it's set, where you've got Kid Rock acting as this sort of mediator, if you will, between Bill Maher and Donald Trump. And if you're wondering why it is that Kid Rock did this, he explained on an interview that he is just, like so many Americans, tired of the divisiveness, almost for the sake of divisiveness, and he thought it could go a long way if somebody that is as far to the left as Bill Maher could meet with somebody that clearly isn't on the left, that is Donald Trump, two individuals that have traded barbs against one another, insulted one another in the public realm. If they could come together and then come out of it being like, hey, look at that, we're able to sit down and be cordial with one another, that might just be the beginning of a signal that sort of thing is possible. And so that was the motivation behind it, according to Kid Rock. Bill Maher opens up his show on Friday, and these are the first public statements he made. And I'm going to play this in its entirety because I think that there's a lot of important information there. And this is Bill Maher on his visit with Trump.
Dinner that was set up by my friend Kid Rock, because we share a belief that there's got to be something better than hurling insults from 3,000 miles away. And let me first say that to all the people who treated this like it was some kind of summit meeting, you're ridiculous. Or if he's going to sign a treaty or something, that's idiot. And he's the most powerful leader in the world. I'm not the leader of anything, except maybe a contingent of centrist-minded people who think there's got to be a better way of running this country than hating each other every minute. So, okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did. Which he did with good humor. And I know as I say that, millions of liberal sphincters just tightened. Oh my God, Bill, are you going to say something nice about him? What I'm going to do is report exactly what happened. You decide what you think about it. And if that's not enough pure Trump hate for you, I don't give a So, no, I didn't go MAGA. And to the president's credit, there was no pressure to. After we left the Oval Office, he showed me the little room off the office, you know, the one where Clinton used to. Okay. The, okay. That's where they keep the merch now. He gave me a bunch of hats, but he didn't ask me to take a picture in one, which I appreciated. The guy I met is not the person who the night before the dinner tweeted a bunch of nasty crap about how he thought this dinner was a bad idea and what a deranged asshole I was. I read it and thought, oh, what a lovely way to welcome someone to your house. But when I got there, that guy wasn't living there. Now, does Trump want respect? Of course. Who doesn't? My friend said to me, what are you going to wear to the White House? I said, I don't know, but I'm not going to dress like Zelensky. I'll tell you that. Okay. Just for starters, he laughs. I've never seen him laugh in public, but he does, including at himself. And it's not fake. Believe me, as a comedian of 40 years, I know a fake laugh when I hear it. Example, in the Oval Office, he was showing me the portraits of presidents, and he pointed to Reagan and said, in all seriousness, you know, the best thing about him, his hair. I said, well, there was also that whole bringing down communism thing, waiting for the button next to the Diet Coke button to get pushed, and I go through the trap door. No, he laughed. He got it. I said to him at one point, Mr. President, you know the dog, that's unusual in the White House. He said, well, a lot of the presidents, they had a dog for political reasons. I said, no, people love dogs. That's what that is. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. I'm telling you what happened. At one point, we were walking through it is an amazing tour of the whole house. And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it must have been something with the 2020 election, because I know he used the word lost. And I distinctly remember saying, wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that. He didn't get mad. He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy. Bob, Kid Rock, told me the night before, he said, if you want to get a word in edgewise, you're going to have to cut him off. He'll just go on. Not at all. I've had so many conversations with prominent people who are much less connected, people who don't look you in the eye, people who don't really listen because they just want to get to their next thing, people whose response to things you say just doesn't track, like, what? None of that with him. And he mostly steered the conversation to, what do you think about this? I know, your mind is blown, so's mine. There were so many moments when I hit him with a joke or contradicted something, and no problem. At dinner, he was asking me about the nuclear situation in Iran in a very genuine, hey, I think you're a smart guy, I want your opinion sort of way. And I said, well, obviously you're privy to things about it I'm not, but for what it's worth, I thought the Obama deal was worth letting play out, because we made Iran destroy 98% of the uranium, and they were 15 years away from a bomb. And then I said to him, but we got rid of that. You got rid of that. He didn't get mad or call me a left-wing lunatic. He took it in. I told him I thought parts of his plan for Gaza were wacky, but that I had supported him in the idea that Gaza could be Dubai instead of hell. I told him he was wrong when he tweeted the night before that I was critical of all things Trump. Not true. Check the tapes. Moving Israel's embassy to Jerusalem, loved it. The border did need to be controlled. I'm glad the cops are getting their morale back. DEI had gone too far. Biological men shouldn't be playing women's sports. Europe should pay for their defense. And of course, it makes sense that Arab countries should take in Arab refugees, like the million Syrians who wound up in Germany when Saudi Arabia took none. He said to me, "You're right, they took none." I said, "Well, you should remind your boyfriend in Saudi Arabia that the next time you see him." He laughed. I never felt I had to walk on eggshells around him. And honestly, I voted for Clinton and Obama, but I would never feel comfortable talking to them the way I was able to talk with Donald Trump. That's just how it went down. Make of it what you will. Me, I feel it's emblematic of why the Democrats are so unpopular these days. He was even okay when I checked him on the orangutan. Let's see. No, he said to Dana White, Bill said my father was an orangutan, and I really love my father. And I said, well, Mr. President, I did that because I didn't like what you were doing regarding Obama's birth origins. I thought that was low. Again, no anger, just a little smile as if to say, yeah, I get it. The most surreal part of the whole night was when I got home. I flew back right after the dinner, and I'm in bed watching 60 Minutes from the night before. And there's Trump in one of their stories, standing at a podium in a room that looked to me like one of the rooms and places we'd just been in. And he's ranting, disgusting, you're a terrible person. And I'm like, who's that guy? What happened to Glinda the Good Witch? And why can't we get the guy I met to be the public guy? And I'm not saying it's our responsibility to do that. It's not. I'm just reporting exactly what I saw over 2.5 hours. I went into the mine, and that's what's down there. A crazy person doesn't live in the White House. A person who plays a crazy person on TV a lot lives there, which I know is f***ed up. It's just not as f***ed up as I thought it was. And I have no illusions now that I'm back to work at my job that he might start a new list. Because I don't have a good feeling and will be critical about a lot of what he's doing, the trade war and disappearing people, ruling by decree, threatening judges, gutting the government with glee. But I also think he now understands I have a job to do, or at least he did on this night, because he said to me early on that he'd seen our last episode, which was the Friday before this dinner. And he said, I thought maybe you'd be nice, but you hit me really hard. I did, because I'm not going to pull my punches that presidents get to propose a third term for themselves. He understood that, and without animus. That doesn't mean he's not going to try to do it. At one point, I said to him, you're scaring people. Do you really want to be scaring your own citizens so much? And I know now you're all saying, and what did he say to that? Honestly, I don't remember. But it wasn't, okay, I'll stop. So MAGA fans, don't worry. Your boy gave me nothing. Just hats. Hats in a very generous amount of time and a willingness to listen and accept me as a possible friend, even though I'm not MAGA, which was the point of the dinner. My favorite part of the whole night was we were standing in the room. And he said, I've heard from a lot of people who really like that we're having this dinner. Not all, but a lot. And I said, same. A lot of people told me they loved it, but not all. And we agreed. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you. Don't talk? As opposed to what? Writing the same editorial for the millionth time and making 25-hour speeches into the wind? Really, that's what liberals have? He takes the piss out of everybody else and we can hold ours? Okay, that's my report. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high. Damn, missed opportunity.
So that was Bill Maher's opening monologue on Friday regarding his visit to the White House. We're going to take a break, traffic, look at the weather, and then talk a bit about it. Plus, later in the program, he's got Pierce Morgan, who's he's left winger, but more like Bill Maher in the sense that he doesn't think that people are inherently evil just because they don't agree with the left position. But then also he's got a Washington Post reporter on there who essentially demonstrates what Bill Maher has noted to some degree is the problem here, and that is particularly people on the left that just refuse to recognize people as human beings if they disagree with them. And we'll play some of that audio as well. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to get that traffic update here in just a moment. Ozarks elder law. We think so much about passing and wills, and obviously that is very important to make sure that you do so much more than you had to once upon a time where your grandparents just wrote it out, or your grandparents, I suppose. We should say there was a point in time where just a piece of paper with a signature and that was enough. That's not the case any longer. Any just tiny bit of daylight government can see, they will get in there and try to take control. But it's not just about property. It's not just about wealth, if you will, but if you have, and listen, you may be decades away from your life expectancy coming around the corner. You may be in your 30s or 40s, but perhaps you take care of someone that age-wise is an adult, but there's special needs, and so you're their guardian. If you don't have preparation in writing done officially, and you pass on, if there's, say, a horrible accident, the government comes in and then starts to decide what happens with that person. If you may just think, oh, well, naturally, this individual will go to a loved one or a family member. Not as long as government exists in this day and age. So you have to prep for all of these things so that you don't end up with someone that you're a caretaker for ending up being some sort of ward of the state while there is family right there nearby willing to help. And not that they can't, possibly end up getting custody and be able to take care of that individual with special needs. But the amount of money and time that goes by while it's done and the government fights it is not something you want to deal with. Now, I know that is a somewhat unique situation I'm talking about, but it's one that some of you may be in. So whether it is a more unique situation or what we all face, and that is one day death, Ozarks Elder Law cannot stress enough making an appointment with them and making sure that that day, when it comes, you are planned for it. OzarksElderLaw.com. A traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies throughout the day with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 71.
The previous segment, I played the monologue Bill Maher had for his show on Friday, and it was a walkthrough of his experience and that dinner that he had with Donald Trump at the White House. The left clearly is very unhappy with him. And some of the headlines are clickbait. Has Bill Maher gone MAGA? Which, of course, he has not. And he even says so in his monologue. The overall reaction, and I'm going to explain why this is. The left, they're upset with him. They think he's a traitor. They are accusing him of turning his back on his principles, while people that are Trump supporters are very welcoming of the message and like to hear it. Now, if you missed it, of course, you can go back and listen to it when it's on the podcast, but we'll also get a link up in one of the
it's on it's on the must-read headlines at KSGF.com.
So you can listen to it in its entirety. Now, there were two different lanes in which Bill Maher was driving that monologue. One was the oftentimes referencing to policy, in which, while he did to push back on Trump, claiming that Trump claimed that Bill Maher never said anything nice or never agreed with him, and Bill Maher's like, no, I did on these number of different issues. Check the receipts, but you listen to him clearly overall when it comes to a great number of issues. He completely disagrees with Donald Trump. He thinks Donald Trump is off his rocker when it comes to his particular positions on a number of issues, and he just doesn't like the way that he behaves in public. He doesn't understand why the Donald Trump that is not in front of the cameras why that individual cannot be the same person that we all see. So he hasn't changed his perspective on things other than who Trump is as a person. And that he, described and explained that the person that we all thought, the left, this horrible, awful person, that's not who's there. And he's not a crazy person. I thought he humorously described him as someone who plays a crazy person out in public, but he's not a crazy person. He's nice. And Bill Maher went so far as to say, the way that I was able to have a conversation with Donald Trump, I never would have felt comfortable having conversations with Obama that way, with Clinton that way. You don't have to walk on eggshells with him. And I think that's very telling. One, it of course demonstrates clearly that's not the behavior of a dictator. All of this talk of Hitler and a dictator, what Bill Maher is essentially saying is that is not at all this person. Regardless of what you may believe, that is not who this is. The reason that So you've got the two. You've got Bill Maher when it comes to his place and his opinions about Trump and policy, and none of that has changed. But then who Trump is as a person, and that has changed after he actually met him in person. That tends to happen. That isn't anything unusual. Anytime somebody may know of someone or hear about someone, it is not uncommon when you actually meet that person, you find out that, oh, you're not like I thought you were, or you're not as people described, because you are actually interacting with them. And so Bill Maher's assessment changed because of that. People that aren't on the left warm up to and welcome and have good feelings about somebody like Bill Maher when they reveal that they recognize that, because generally speaking, that's what people on the right and in the middle want. They want to be able to disagree with people, their neighbors, churchgoers, coworkers, friends in life, want to be able to disagree and not have that turn into you're evil and I'm good. When RFK Jr., before he endorsed Trump, but he was out there and he was saying things that a lot of conservative commentators got very nervous, because you had a lot of conservatives that are like, hey, I kind of like this guy. And there was a freak out, like, he's not conservative, he's not conservative. And people who weren't, or who were, Trump supporters that began to be drawn towards what RFK Jr. was saying, it wasn't because of his beliefs as much as this is a guy who is a Democrat who didn't automatically accuse conservatives of being evil. His go-to wasn't you're a racist, you're a homophobe. And his positions weren't solely based on, well, what does Trump say? I'm going to say the opposite. He was willing to agree on certain issues where the right fell. And it was for that reason that, and Tulsi Gabbard would be another example of this, it wasn't because all of a sudden she became somebody, she was a Democrat and now she's a conservative. It was because she was willing to have conversations with people across the political aisle that didn't result in her just saying you're racist, you're homophobe, you're a liar, you're a Hitler, you're a dictator. She could recognize that we are able on opposite sides of the political spectrum to disagree and still recognize that we're human beings. And that's how it used to be in this country. This is the way that people used to function, that you could, you vote for different people and okay, so be it. And frankly, that wasn't even discussed that much because politics wasn't as all-consuming as it has become today, particularly amongst people on the left who just flat out will not associate with anyone in which they have political disagreement. Now, and this is where the problem really genuinely is. It's on the left, because the left does not want to operate that way. And all one has to do is look at the left's reaction to somebody like Bill Maher, one of their own, or the way that they treated RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard. The moment that you say, hey, wait a minute, this guy isn't a dictator, he's actually a nice guy, they want you out. You are gone. You must be demonized. You must be absolutely destroyed. You must be eviscerated. I mean, and we'll get to Gretchen Whitmer as an example of this. Gretchen Whitmer was simply in the Oval Office. She, of course, the high-profile Democrat of Michigan, and she is expected to run for president this upcoming round of elections, or for 2028. And she's in the Oval Office, and she's already being written off. Well, she can't win a primary now. No matter how many horrible things she has said about Donald Trump, no matter how many times she has blamed him for things that frankly aren't his fault, no matter how many times she has demonized him and spread disinformation about him, the fact that she stood in the Oval Office regarding an issue that is important to her state, so it's incumbent upon her as a governor to go there and try to help facilitate what it was Trump was doing in that moment that she believed was something beneficial for her state. She's written off because she associated with the enemy. As much as the left and the media and the Democrat Party wants to pin the divisions in this country on Donald Trump, it is not Donald Trump. listen to anyone who, including people on like Bill Maher, who meets with Donald Trump. Clearly, he is not the problem when it comes to that relationship. Now, you may argue he's the problem when it comes to the economy, or he's the problem when it comes to whatever other policy-resulted issues that you may, want to point to. But when it comes to this idea that we cannot associate with one another as human beings because we have different political perspectives, Trump is, and Bill Maher, both are the examples of how we don't have to be that way. And you have probably seen the videos that have been done generally during election season. It was done in 2016, and this last time around, 2020 as well, where you'd have some leftists decide, I'm going to go into the belly of the beast. I'm going to go to a MAGA rally and see how I'm treated. And every time that would happen, they would go to their social media page and say they were shocked with how nice everyone was to them. They could not believe, even knowing that they were anti-MAGA, that all of these MAGA people welcomed them and said, hey, maybe you'll learn something. It's nice to meet you. Hey, you can stand with us. We'll have a good time together. That's not what happens when somebody who is MAGA shows up at a Kamala Harris rally or any other sort of Democrat rally. The reality is, the problem in terms of the nasty divisions that we have in this country are because of the perspective of the Democrat Party and the left. And it's this idea that there must be one belief system, everyone must be compliant, and even if it's your family member, if they don't fall lockstep in and instead decide to become some sort of MAGA extremist, you got to cut them out of your life. That's the problem. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. After Bill Maher's monologue on Friday, in which he angered a lot of people on the left for, quote, humanizing Donald Trump, this shouldn't be any surprise that Bill Maher came out the way that he did, and that was because, virtually anyone who ever actually sits down with Donald Trump and they come out of that meeting, whether it was a political meeting or a more non-political sort of situation, that they all talk about how Donald Trump is this funny, gracious guy. I've never heard anyone that didn't, even people that didn't like Donald Trump, actually meet him for the first time and come out and be like, well, he was worse than I thought. He's just a mean, bad person. Never. You don't hear that. And so it really shouldn't come as a surprise. Now, if you're somebody like Bill Maher, however, and you're somewhat limited in the sources, self-limited in the sources in which you get your information, you can see how that would be unexpected. Bill Maher noted in his monologue that Donald Trump actually laughs. I've never seen why he's never done that in public. Yeah, he does do it, but you don't see that when you limit yourself to getting news from the mainstream news, because they're going to do anything and everything, and they have, to dehumanize Donald Trump. And so the rest of us that open ourselves up to information from all outlets, we see that side of Donald Trump. But somebody like Bill Maher, who doesn't necessarily, and he increasingly is, I think, but who generally live in that sort of left-wing bubble, they don't see that side of Donald Trump, and so they're shocked when they do. Now, in terms of part of the problem, afterwards there's the sit around, have discussion. Well, first he interviewed Steve Bannon, that's a whole nother story. But Piers Morgan is sitting there. Piers Morgan, obviously, he's kind of a lefty. But then you also have the Ryder, I think is his last name. Rogan, something Rogan. And he is a Washington Post reporter. And this is supposed to be an objective reporter. Listen to his response to Bill Maher's monologue.
I just wanted to report exactly what I saw. I did it to the best of my abilities.
Counterpoint?
Yes.
Counterpoint?
Yeah.
Bill, I think you're right in saying that people have made too much of this, okay? It's not the Alta Summit. You're not Churchill. Kid Rock is not Stalin. We are, okay? So, yes, I believe too much has been made about this, but I think you've fallen into the trap. I think that I represent 99% of the internet when I say this, is that you've played the game of proximity is principle. And what people are worried about is not your motivation. We believe you. We love you, Bill. Everybody loves Bill, right? Questioning your motivation. I'm questioning Trump's, okay? And if we can say that you went there in good faith, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't there in good faith. I mean, you sold him on the Iran deal and he took it in. I mean, give me a break, okay? So the idea here is that your motivation is sound, but what's the impact? And I think a lot of people out there, fans of yours, people who love you, people who are fans of you, like me, I've been fans of you.
You don't have to patronize me, dude.
Okay.
I don't know you.
Fair enough.
I never met you.
I'm just saying that this comes from
not
a place
everybody
of
has to
love.
like it.
All I'm
That's
saying
what he
is-
said. There are people who didn't want it to happen at all. You sound like one of them. It's
No,
okay.
no,
But did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Like, what is the alternative to not talking? Just sit at your lunch table and don't talk to anybody?
I've interviewed Trump. Here's an interview.
That's just not an interview. This was not an interview.
I agree with the principle of engagement. I'm just saying, from his perspective, you have to understand that people out there know, all Americans know, that for him, this was a PR stunt. And in his view, you were a prop in that PR stunt. Okay?
I don't agree with that.
That doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do. It just
But if you go on social media for 5 minutes now, you just have these tribal fury raging all day long. Everyone's got to be impeccably there, implacably here. And actually, most Americans and most Brits, they're not like that. So there's this screaming going on between these tribes, and actually walking across that line, sitting down, having dinner, having a laugh, having a chat. And then the idea that Bill Maher is now going to stop criticizing Donald Trump.
I didn't do it
with him. It's preposterous.
I didn't do it before. I didn't do that. The fact that you began your little rant with the internet, that tells me everything. You take your cues from the internet. Good luck.
No.
The internet is a cesspool. It just wants to fight. And,
I support what you're trying to do. I'm just saying the expectation that Donald Trump is going to be changed by
I said in peace I did not think that was going to happen.
In that case, then go.
I love the people on either side who ignore the parts they don't like and then and I just did it. It wasn't like it was 3 weeks ago.
I don't know what the hell you said to him at dinner, but all hell broke loose within about 3 days of that dinner.
He was doing
Were you
it.
giving him economic advice in there?
Right. So, of course, the point there in I think Bill Maher, just in that exchange, or well, I should say, the Washington Post reporter highlighted the real problem here. He and as Bill Maher indicated, I love these people that just pick the parts that they like and they don't, and then ignore the parts they don't like. Bill Maher very specifically was saying, I don't think he's going to change. In fact, that was a punchline of a couple of different jokes that he told. Yet the Washington Post reporter that incapable of absorbing any sort of information and insulted Bill Maher, tried to insult him by saying this idea that he's going to Trump. And Bill, you can understand his frustration as somebody on the left who was saying, listen, this is just exactly what happened. I don't think it's, I'm not telling you Trump is different or going to change in terms of his policies. That, I'm just telling you this is exactly what happened. But these people on the left, and that's a reporter who's supposed to be about factual information, incapable of understanding it. There's so much talk about how can the Democrat Party save itself. If they adopted the approach that Bill Maher adopts, and that is disagree over policy, but don't lead with hate, then they would be on the path to relevancy once again. But that segment, that hate-filled segment of their political party just has such a stranglehold that anytime anyone will even sit down with or have a conversation with Donald Trump or a Trump supporter, they throw him overboard. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Of course, again, the show that you missed, Spotify, iTunes, our own KSGF.com, the app as well. We will have a conversation coming up with Congressman Burleson, and we'll find out where these chips are falling in terms of the budget and just what the reality is there. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Kayla said, working with Emily, an absolute pleasure from start to finish. We've had the opportunity to both buy and sell properties with House Theory Realty. Each experience exceeded our expectations. Their deep knowledge of the market, strategic insights, and keen eye for value truly made a difference every step of the way. Beyond their expertise, they were a genuine delight to work with, professional, responsive, and always looking out for our best interest. And that is, in line with what you get with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I wonder how that open house went on Sunday. Of course, she always has.
It's a beautiful house.
And I was the way when she was describing it, I thought I need to look at this, but I don't know. I got distracted and I never did.
It's beautiful.
It's probably best that I didn't look at it. You look. I don't need. I'm good where I am. But consistently people who utilize, whether it's very, very limited capacity as I've used her, or more extensive buying and selling homes like that person, or a 2-year search before somebody like Sarah and her husband found a home. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, your absolute go-to. I want to thank Christian County Central Committee for allowing me to once again MC their Lincoln Days. It went really well. They donated a table for KSGF, so we had a number of our listeners there. And then there actually ended up being kind of 2 tables because the owner of Godfathers bought a table and donated the tickets so that KSGF listeners could utilize that table as well. So we actually had a couple of different tables there, and I thought it was great. Andrew Bailey was there, and then it was really law enforcement centric. Mark Lamb, America's Sheriff, a lot of people recognize him from Live PD. He was there. We spoke with him, I think last week or the week before. And then there were sheriffs, Brad Cole, Christian County Sheriff, and then the Osage and Berry County Sheriffs were also there. And so at one point they all sat on stage and it was just Q&A, people asking questions. One of the questions that was asked was regarding Operation Soap and some of these other individuals that utilize social media. It's essentially a catch a predator sort of situation. And they set up a social media site in which they pretend to be an underage person. And if somebody, which inevitably happens, that is an adult, reaches out and then, they communicate with them. And oftentimes the adult escalates things to an inappropriate level, then wants to meet for purposes of sex. They make it very clear. And then they agree to meet in a public place and they live stream it. And that information is handed over to law enforcement. And they've been in the news. And we had an interview last week with 2 of the individuals with Operation Soap about the different jurisdictions. And they really call out Greene County as being one in which, the local prosecutors say, hey, we just won't and don't have the ability to work with you on this because law doesn't allow us to, but they say other jurisdictions do. And the sheriffs were asked about that, and their position all without, I don't want to mischaracterize, I inferred was, hey, we always love when citizens, try to do good and help out. Just make sure you don't put yourself in a dangerous position, because you don't want to put anybody's safety at risk, and just be open in communication with law enforcement when you're doing it. And it was an answer that most people appreciated to hear. But I thought it was a good night. Great food. That facility there is fantastic in Nixa. I forget the name of the facility itself. Mark, the guy who runs it, just does an incredible job. I think he owns it as well. But it's across from, I always use it as a landmark, Illusions. There are on the south side of the road a number of sort of stone buildings, and one of them is the event center there. And, they just do an incredible job. But just wanted to, again, thank the Central Committee in Christian County for inviting me and allowing me to MC. And I really don't do, everybody's so nice and like you do such a great job. And I'm just sort of the segue between the more important people, but I'll take compliments any way I can get them. We got Congressman Burleson going to be joining us here in just a couple of moments. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies throughout the day with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 71.
Congressman Burleson joining us this morning. Thank you for doing so. Appreciate your time as always. And I want to just start off asking, last week there were reports about the Senate with the budget and the House and then holdouts and this happened and that. And frankly, it becomes there's a lot of different versions and back and forths and finger pointing that oftentimes for a lot of people it's like, oh, I'll just wait until it's done and figure out whether this is good or not. So where are things? What is the situation now? And I ask this in the context of the previous discussions we've had about those who recognize, and you're one of them, that we really have to offset. We've got to get this spending under control versus perhaps some in the establishment that maybe want to do it in a way that makes it look like they're doing it, but they aren't really doing it in a serious way. What's the landscape?
To go back, the fiscal hawks, especially the people in the budget committee, most of whom are members of Freedom Caucus, and then the outer, the rest of the fiscal hawks, including myself and also in Freedom Caucus, fought to to create the House version of the budget reconciliation bill and that framework, and to ensure that it included at minimum about $1.5 trillion in cuts, and then it ratchets up as they want to find more tax cuts. You're required to go find the places to cut spending in order to pay for those tax cuts, and it could go up. I mean, so we did that in such a way that if they wanted to make the Trump tax cuts permanent, they would have to get to about $2 trillion in spending cuts at the minimum. And if you wanted to then add no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, all that kind of stuff, then you'd have to go above that, and you have to go find $2.5 trillion or more. And so that's kind of where we left it. We sent it over to the Senate, and the Senate kicked back a version that removed the the floor of 1.5 trillion and put it at 4 billion. That's a huge spread. I mean,
yeah, it is.
4 billion versus 1.5 trillion. And we just thought it was a joke. We thought it was a clear indication that the Senate is not serious about spending cuts, that they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to cut taxes and then continue to add to our deficits. And they're ignoring where all the red flags around, from economists and everyone who's saying that we have a serious debt problem. We have a debt problem right now in being able to get people to buy our debt. And so we have to cut spending. So what we did was we held out on voting for
Congressman.
Sorry.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm gonna take a quick break and maybe I'll have Sarah call you back. The line just really started breaking up. It may be on our end. I don't know. So I'm gonna have her call you back here. See if that'll kind of reset the line so we can hear you more clearly, because it's breaking up enough to where it's just not even I'm even able to tell what it is you're trying to say. So we'll do that real quick here. 60 seconds. We'll be back with Congressman Burleson. I'm Nick Reed. I want to greathomeloan.com. I want to thank, of course, Don Carricker, part of that Central Committee in Christian County that was kind enough to once again have me MC that at event. And, all that, of course, he does. A lot of you, I mention this because you're like, well, we hear from Alex, we hear from Anthony. What's Don up to? And he's very, very active. It's just, as oftentimes, smart people in their retirement find lots of things to occupy their time. And for him, it's obviously very meaningful. But, of course, the legacy continues with Alex Carricker, Anthony Carricker, and that full team for any of your home loan needs and advice. Information. They're not just there for after you make the decision that you want to refinance or get that home loan or the reverse mortgage. They are there in the lead up as well to help you decide. You get in contact with them, ask them any questions. They'll give you what information you need in order to make that decision for yourself. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. We're chatting with Congressman Burleson, and where we left off before we took a quick break was the fact that the Senate had responded to the House version of this bill of over $1 trillion in cuts with a laughable, in my opinion, $4 billion, which isn't even a drop in the bucket, and how if I remember correctly, you described it as demonstrating there was a lack of seriousness on their part, and so let's pick it up from there.
Yeah, so we ended up we had to hold the line. So they wanted us to pass this and just move forward, and there was a group of us fiscal hawks that all met together repeatedly. In sometimes in secret, we would figure out which locations we could meet in, and then kind of strategize from there, and kind of built a pack. In fact, the words "we're going to either hang together or we're going to hang separately" was mentioned, and so we pushed and pushed and pushed and made it clear that we're going to vote no on this reconciliation bill coming back from the Senate. We went all the way to the evening of the vote, made it clear to the speaker he does not have the votes, and so he started then. So I actually told the speaker we need to go into a room, we need to have a conversation, and that night they paused the vote on the floor. We went into a room and had about a 1-hour conversation into a side room, and the speaker understood he was going to lose the vote. So then the Senate, the White House, and the Speaker's office got scrambling, and we got in writing commitments that from the White House that they would, that a certain minimum level of spending cuts that they would demand. We got commitments from the Senate that they would match our 1.5, that they agreed to the 1.5 at minimum. And then we got agreement in writing from all three of these. We're in writing. From the one from the speaker was that not only would we do at minimum the 1.5, but we would include the pay for going forward. So if they want more tax cuts, they have to find spending cuts. So we got all of that in agreement, and then we made them do a press conference saying that, so they're on public record, and those documents have been, released or leaked. So they've on record verbally saying it, and then there's documentation that they said it. So that doesn't mean that they're not going to go back, or they're going to attempt to go back on their word, but it's our job now going forward to hold their feet to this.
So is it at this point back in the Senate's court? I mean, given that they're the ones that submitted that $4 billion.
So the first, what was passed is the reconciliation instructions. So it's the resolution that begins the process of reconciliation. Once the House accepted the Senate's bill, it now goes to the committees, and all of the different committees now have instructions to find. So in many cases, so for example, in that resolution, we said that the Energy and Commerce Committee has to find $800 billion in savings, and the Workforce and Education Committee has to find $300 billion in savings, right? And then you just go on committee by committee, and then the Ways and Means Committee is basic. Instead of finding savings, it's allowed to increase the deficit through tax cuts, and so that's the overall resolution. And now the committees have to go about filling in the details, and then that final package of bills will go to the Budget Committee, which will then vote it out of budget and bring it to the floor.
We're talking with Congressman Burles, and your thoughts on how everything is played out with the tariffs. As usual, the Democrats cannot find a single message. I, over the past week, like you, I'm sure, listened to every contradictory message narrative coming from the Democrats from, the tariffs were horrible in the first place, and then when there was a temporary pause on those who did what it was that Trump said could happen, like, hey, if you want to negotiate this stuff, come to the table. Then they started saying that was bad, and started now claiming that there perhaps is insider trading. I mean, it's just they are all over the place as usual. What are your thoughts on how the tariff fight, if you will, is playing out?
Yes, I've said repeatedly that I think that our goal shouldn't be to have permanent tariffs. Our goal should be to have to have a even playing field, right, where we are not getting tariffed by our allies or our adversaries. We should seek that the United States goods, the things that we make, don't have a barrier going into the sale in any other country. So So we need to use this in order to eliminate any and all barriers for us to be able to sell products in other countries. And if this unlocks that, I think that then this will be a big win. And the fact that Trump went to the line April 2nd, it sent shockwaves to all these countries. And from what I've heard, it last week it was 70. As of today, I've heard it's 135 countries that are coming to the table, and with agreements that will get them below the 10% or get them to the 10% number which is the minimum that Trump right now has. And so that's a big deal.
It cracked me up that the position at least some of the Democrats are taking is they're calculating that people are somewhat okay with the idea of tariffs against China, because I've heard a lot of these Democrats say, well, but that's what he should have done to begin with instead of putting tariffs on everyone, not realizing what he has managed to do is not just make it's I know sometimes they just don't care, but instead of this being between America and China, Trump's approach has made it virtually against China against the entire world. I mean, he has created allies by doing it this way. And so we're clearly in a much, much stronger position in the way that Trump has done it, as opposed to, well, he should have just left everyone else out of it.
Yeah, and the way in which he's doing it is really encouraging businesses to get out of China as well. So by us leaning in on China, and look, the other thing that people need to understand about the way these tariffs work is that really, for example, a Chinese shoe that Nike purchases for $10, okay, and then sells in the United States for $100, isn't going to go up 135%. It's not going to suddenly be a $250 shoe, because the tariff is on the product as it leaves China. So a $10 shoe at 100% increase in tariff is now a $20 shoe, and Nike may still sell it for $100. Let's say they add the additional 10% on top, and they sell it for 110. That's what we're talking about here.
Right.
But what in general, what Nike is going to do is make a business decision. Do we want to continue to make these shoes in China, or maybe we might move to Indonesia, maybe we go to Cambodia, maybe we come to the United States? But they recognize that doing business in China does have a cost to it, and I think that if we're going to maintain superiority on the global stage, it's something that we're going to need to do.
I've noticed, and it's gotten the news stories, that there's been, for example, China, somewhere in China, I don't know if it was a Chinese communist government or otherwise, but this AI description of what this is going to result in, and it's showing a bunch of overweight Americans that are trying to work in a factory. I saw that there was a posting of some just random citizen of China, essentially mocking the U.S., saying, we don't even have any of your products anyway, so this is silly. You guys aren't doing any good. And I find it interesting that, to me, it's a signal that China realizes they are on the losing end of this, that they are trying to utilize social media to influence the American public perception. Basically, and to me, it's obvious what's happening here. I mean, they're showing their hand, that they're worried, that they're trying to win over Americans by creating these social media, whether it's people, individuals, or AI stuff, to make us think, well, man, the China's not worried about this at all. This is just bad for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if it really was going to be beneficial to China, or they weren't really worried about it, they wouldn't be screaming so loud.
Yeah. Any final thoughts this morning?
No, it's good to be back.
Okay.
I'm going to be here for this week and next week. I've got lots of meetings lined up. Steve in my office, Steve Helms, and my team they definitely they keep me busy when I'm here, and so it's good to be back. And my favorite moment this weekend was sitting on my lawnmower and spending hours mowing my own grass. So it was great.
I believe that. Congressman Burleson, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your week as well. And, well, I guess happy Easter, right? Because it'll be after that
Yeah.
happy Easter to you and your family.
Happy Passover
Yes,
and
Passover,
Easter.
Good Friday, everything. And as always, great to have you. Talk with you next week. All right, Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies throughout the day with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 71. And Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, I had Russell out last week to just give me some insight on my HVAC, and it turns out that my furnace is 28 years old and my AC unit's just about the same. So needless to say, some changes are needed in the future for me, which is good because Foreman, they offer high quality HVAC replacement and they just know how to recommend the right system that's going to work well for your home. And everyone on their team is just highly skilled HVAC techs. So whether you're like me and you just need a desperate upgrade, or you want to get your AC tuned up and just all ready to go for summer, I highly recommend Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Now you can find all of the contact information or schedule an appointment at foremanmechanical.com, or you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, so there are some new details. There's a lot of questions to me regarding the fire of the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. So it was reported that there was a mansion fire, and according to the reports, the governor and his family, they were there, and they were in a different part of the mansion when the fire broke out. But according to the reports, they didn't know about the fire until police woke them up to tell them. And a lot of people are asking, not from a conspiratorial way, but how does that happen? Like, if you're in your home, like, how is it that, like, you're inside the house and there's a fire and law enforcement is the one who knows about it before you do? I suppose what could have happened is somebody saw the fire, called 911, then they showed up. But why is the governor's mansion not have, I don't know, fire alarms? Have just a nest, or just something? Come daylight savings time when fire departments go around and visit people and remind you, hey, check those fire alarms. Is that something that's missing in the governor's mansion? Or, what's the deal there? Now, that may not be the big takeaway, obviously, but that is kind of a head scratcher that there was apparently no system in place that would have that awoke the family when there was a fire that did damage. We're not talking about some little tiny fire here. It was a big enough fire that some severe damage was done. Now, again, they were in a separate part of the mansion, but still, what if, however law enforcement was informed of this, that didn't happen? Could it have gotten to the point that it was so out of control that perhaps it burned to the ground and the family was burned up inside? But again, not the big takeaway. The big takeaway is, of course, why. Now, the makeup of everything leaves some big questions open right now. First off, Governor Shapiro is a Democrat. So when we talk about any sort of attack on a political figure, the default is oftentimes, well, it's probably political opposition. However, Shapiro is Jewish. And we are talking about, for Christians and Jews alike, that this is a pretty significant period of time. If there was a religious component to this, we know that the anti-Semitism, particularly the violent anti-Semitism, is within the Democratic Party itself. We've just seen since October 7th, the rage on college campuses. I mean, the streets of a number of different cities, the calls for Jews to be eliminated, the calls to punish Jews. And so if this was from a religious perspective, an attack, a hate crime, then that would clearly lean much more towards if you're just going to look at the behavior we've seen over the past year and a half or so, that certainly is going to be a left-winger. So that comes into play here. Is even if it isn't religious, political, what we have seen is people within the Democrat Party that are left-wing attack those that are more moderate. Now, they've been verbal attacks, but Gavin Newsom, for example, when he sat down with Charlie Kirk, whom we carry here in the evenings for Charlie Kirk's podcast, and indicated that it was unfair that girls be forced to compete against boys, though it hasn't stopped him signing into law protection for boys to do that. But, the left just eviscerated him for that. Gretchen Whitmer, who was in the White House for, as governor of Michigan in order to promote causes that were going to help the people in her state. Well, she's a Democrat, and she's also planning on running for president. The left is out for blood. They are out there just viciously attacking her for, even being in the same room as Donald Trump. So even from a non-religious but political standpoint, we have seen Democrats that are positioning themselves as being reasonable, willing to work across the aisle, being attacked from within their own party. So when you look at this on the surface, it isn't as simple as, well, he's a Democrat, so that must mean that a Republican did it. Of course, you also throw in the fact that I'm trying to think in terms of targeting individuals or targeting. I mean, you just don't have these lone individuals go out and attack someone, and it turns out to be a Republican going after some sort of Democrat. Even in the lead up to the election, whether it's people getting run over, being attacked, being stabbed, it's virtually every single time somebody on the left attacking someone that is on the right. And oftentimes they fully acknowledge it. Oh, he said he's a Republican. He's a danger to democracy. So that statistically indicates that, in all likelihood, if politics is involved, it would be somebody from the left, even though Shapiro is a Democrat governor. Now, there's also, could be non-political from an ideological standpoint, but somebody that just, didn't like him. Now, according to some of the latest reports, that was the case, though we don't know exactly why. The latest on Fox News, Pennsylvania governor's mansion attack suspect Cody Balmer admitted harboring hatred towards Shapiro. They write, the man who allegedly set fire to the mansion of Governor Shapiro and his family turn himself in, according to the criminal complaint obtained by Fox News. Cody Balmer, 38, of Harrisburg, was first identified to police by an ex-lover after he allegedly confessed to her and, quote, wanted her to call police to turn him in, the complaint said. It was only a short time later that Balmer turned himself in outside Pennsylvania State Police headquarters, police said. While being interviewed by troopers, Balmer admitted to harboring hatred towards Governor Shapiro. Balmer allegedly told investigators, quote, he removed gasoline from a lawnmower and poured it into Heineken bottles he found at his residence. Balmer allegedly said he walked an hour to the governor's mansion with the intention of throwing his homemade Molotov cocktail into the residence. Now, that is another, if you're just looking at behavior, what we have seen particularly with Teslas and Republican offices, Molotov cocktails is a weapon of choice by the left. Again, doesn't mean that this is an individual who is of the left, but that is a common behavior. Troopers say Balmer admitted to scaling a perimeter fence, breaking 2 windows with a hammer, and throwing Molotov cocktails inside. The arson suspect allegedly admitted he was aware it was a possibility that Shapiro and others were at home at the time, and, quote, it was a possibility that people could be injured by his actions. Had Balmer come face-to-face with Shapiro, he allegedly said he would have beaten him with a hammer. Following the interview, Balmer was taken to Dauphin County Prison for arraignment. Police said the arson suspect was caught on security camera both in and outside the mansion wearing a black snap-on jacket, black boots, and carrying a bag. Troopers say they found the jacket, bag, and a small sledgehammer at Balmer's home. The fire broke out around 2 a.m. Sunday after Shapiro, considered a potential presidential contender for the Democrat Party in 2008, and his family celebrated the first night of the Jewish holiday of Passover. Shapiro said, quote, this kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society, and I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. It has to stop. We have to be better than this. Now, that reaction also indicates that if there is politics at play here, it is a left-winger, because anytime somebody from the left carries out an act of violence against anyone, the Democrats' position is it doesn't matter what party they're from. All violence is bad violence. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. I suspect that if, and again, we may find out otherwise, if this was somebody that, let's say, was inspired by Donald Trump, I doubt Governor Shapiro would say it really doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. But time may tell what the actual motivation was here, because so far the reports aren't necessarily saying, why it is he harbored hatred. Now, the Gateway Pundit, I believe, has a story in which they have information indicating that government had maybe seized some property of this individual, and that could be part of the reason that he was so upset. But again, early reports and time will potentially tell. I used to say time will tell, but we find oftentimes, depending on the motivation of these attackers, the government becomes very, very tight-lipped as to what the actual motivation is. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, everyone. The upcoming open house, Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. It's going to be open to the public, free food, T-shirts, all sorts of fun stuff. It's going to be a big festive time. That is slated for Tuesday, April 29th. And I thought I should mention, because we hear about interest rates and we're used to high interest rates. Pinnacle Honda currently has 0.99%. So it's less than 1% interest rates available on select certified pre-owned Honda. Now, if you know anything about borrowing in order to purchase a vehicle, that a lot of times the very beneficial low interest rates are for new vehicles only. But if you're wanting to buy something that is pre-owned, suddenly that interest rate goes way up. And there's a number of different reasons for that. But with Pinnacle Honda, 0.99% interest rates on select certified pre-owned Honda is a pretty good deal. Pretty remarkable deal. And, of course, Honda being committed to America, 70% of Honda automobiles sold in the U.S. being made in America. Ridgeline, Passport, Odyssey specifically, all made exclusively in Alabama. Pinnacle Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. All right, now, a couple of stories here of would-be assassins of Donald Trump. Less than 2 weeks after a survey found that half, I think 55%, of self-identified leftists believe killing Trump would be justifiable, a Pennsylvania man has been charged with threatening to murder Trump and other U.S. officials. Sean Monper, 32, of Butler, the same Pennsylvania community where Trump came within a fraction of an inch of being assassinated last July, faces federal charges of making threats to assault and murder Trump, Doge advisor, and Tesla founder Elon Musk, U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement agents, and others, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. Moper, who allegedly took to YouTube as Mr. Satan, made a series of threatening statements between January 15th and last weekend, according to the criminal complaint. On Tuesday, the FBI National Threat Operations Section received an emergency disclosure. The Justice Department said a subsequent federal investigation determined that the self-identified Mr. Satan was residing at Monper's residence, according to the DOJ. He allegedly sought and obtained a firearm permit shortly following President Trump's inauguration. He had posted, eventually, I'm going to do a mass shooting. This was something he wrote in March. A week later, he stated, I've been buying one gun a month since the election, body armor and ammo, according to the criminal complaint. February 17th, 2025, he posted, we just need to start killing people. Trump, Elon, all the heads of agencies Trump appointed, and anyone who stands in the way. Remember, we are the majority. MAGA is the minority in the country. Well, not according to the election. And by the time it's time to make the move, they will be weakened. Many will be crushed in these policies, and they will want revenge too. American Revolution 2.0. March 4th, he posted, I'm going to assassinate him and myself. ICE are terrorist people. We need to start killing them. This is increasingly a message that people on the left are posting. He went on to also post, if I see an armed ICE agent, I will consider it a domestic terrorist and an active shooter, and I will open fire on them. So this is... And I bring this up because mainstream media doesn't really cover this stuff so much anymore, including this story. A 17-year-old Wisconsin teen allegedly killed his parents in pursuit of the, quote, financial means and autonomy to assassinate Trump, according to the FBI. Court documents show the 17-year-old was part of a satanic cult which has strong anti-Judaism, anti-Christian, and anti-Western ideologies, according to WISN. Investigators also found a manifesto which described a call to assassinate Trump, make and detonate bombs, and carry out other terrorist attacks. CNN noted the charges against the 17-year-old include 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of hiding a corpse. He also faces federal charges tied to the planned assassination. In one entry in the manifesto, the 17-year-old addressed his plans for Trump, writing, as to why, specifically Trump, I think it's pretty obvious. By getting rid of the president and perhaps the vice president, that is guaranteed to bring some chaos. The 17-year-old allegedly killed his mother and stepfather inside their home in February. The 2 victims were shot to death. Oh, but that being said, let me play this gem of audio for you. This is from the domestic terrorism expert on CNN.
What we're looking at here is obviously, when it comes to extremism in this country, I mean, the issue very much so is on the right, on the far right, from Charlottesville to January 6th. There isn't exactly an equivalent on the left in this moment.
Okay. Whatever you say, that is CNN. Hitler made an address from the White House in the last couple of days with a message specifically for the Jews. Well, of course, because he's Hitler. Did he announce the roundup? Did he announce their extermination? Here's what he had to say.
I want to wish the Jewish people in America and Israel and all around the world a very happy Passover. Every year at this time, Jewish families celebrate God's liberation of the ancient Israelites from slavery in Egypt, guiding them through the prophet Moses on a 40-year journey to a very, very promised land. The story of Exodus, which is retold around the globe and all over the world at every Passover Seder, is a reminder not only of the enduring strength of the Jewish people, but of the importance of putting our faith in Almighty God no matter what the circumstance. To all the Jewish families gathering with friends and loved ones this week, have a blessed Passover, and may God continue to watch over the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Isn't that very Hitler-esque?
Very.
What a true Nazi right there. See, he's so cunning. What I'm sure he's doing here is trying to trick Jews into thinking that he's the opposite. That way, when he swoops in and does whatever evil thing he's going to do to the Jews, they won't see it coming.
Maybe the real message is if you play it backwards.
Oh, that could
Yes.
be. That could be. I didn't try that. I think also his threat and withdrawal of funds for universities that refuse to crack down on anti-Semitism, that's also a ploy in order to once again make the foolish Jewish people and Jewish students think that he's on their side. There was an article that was written, and it noted that if you take the top two states, I think it's Wyoming and Virginia, in which Trump won the greatest majority for this last presidential election, his popularity in Israel is even higher than those two states in America. That if Trump ran for, quote, president in Israel, he would win by greater margins there than he won in the most pro-Trump states here in the United States of America. I mean, this continued message from oftentimes anti-Semites themselves that Trump is anti-Semitic, I guess they found the one thing he actually does fail at miserably, because for all of the continued efforts to try to paint him as a failure as a businessman, a failure when it comes to, the economy, a failure to this policy and that policy, a failure to work out good deals, they've been completely wrong. One of their great frustrations is how he continues to prove that he is a success and he does know what he's doing. But they may have nailed him on this one, because for somebody that is a Nazi, someone that is Hitler reincarnate, someone who is anti-Semitic, he clearly fails at every single opportunity he has to be truly anti-Semitic, to the point that he is more popular in Israel than he is in the most red MAGA states here in the United States of America, according to polling. It's a pretty remarkable feat. Coming up in the next hour, I kid you not, I've got audio Bernie Sanders at Coachella. So that, plus more news in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. So I guess this space flight is coming up here, in just 20-some minutes? This is the one that was announced with the all-female crew. Remember they announced that Gail King. So Gail King is one of the individuals.
Is that the CBS gal?
Yeah, which is why CBS has been all over it and promoting it, understandably so.
Oh, yeah. Hashtag Gail goes to space.
Yeah. Who are the, I don't have in front of me. It seemed like I knew all, isn't one of them an actress? And they're all notable. But what I found to be humorous in the announcement of, I think there's four or six of these relatively high-profile, wealthy female individuals. And when they were announced some months ago, it was really making a big deal out of it being an all-female crew. Now, my first thought was, now, wait a minute here. I mean, a crew? What is it that they're going to do? Now, so I read in it, I read into the company. It's not SpaceX, but I think it's some other company that does this. I'm light on details when it comes to that part of it, because that's not really the point. But and I found that, well, it's all automated. They're passengers. They're not doing anything other than they're riding up there. And I'm sure that takes a particular amount of training, given that they are going into space. But I found it humorous that they kept referring to them as a crew. And I'm like, when I go on a plane, I'm not part of the crew. I'm a passenger because I'm not doing anything. I'm just along for the ride. Even if I get in some sort of autonomous vehicle that drives itself, I'm not a crew member.
Katy Perry's on it, too.
Oh, Katy Perry, that's right. Who else is on it? Isn't Jeff Bezos' ex-wife on it, maybe?
What's her name?
If you say it, I'll remember it.
There is Lauren Sanchez. There's a film producer, Kieran Flynn.
Yeah.
And then there is a NASA rocket scientist, Aisha Bow.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think one of them was or maybe it's Bill Gates' ex-wife. No, I don't know. Anyway, point being is, see right there, it says crew of icons. That's not a crew to me. Am I wrong? Am I nitpicking on that? To me, a crew, you're the people who are flying it, you're driving it.
Operating?
Yeah, you're operating it. It's a very clear distinction. If you go on a cruise ship, you see someone, oh, that's a crew member. That's not me, because I'm just here for the ride. And so to me, because when I first saw this story, I was like, oh, wait a minute, Katy Perry? Have they been going through training to operate this space vehicle? I would have thought I would have heard about this ahead of time, that you had these non-astronaut people or non-pilots learning how it was to navigate a ship that goes into space. And then I found out, well, no, you're along for the ride. You're not the crew. If I'm on a roller coaster, I'm not a crew member.
The word participants
or
passengers.
Passenger. But I just get the feeling they're trying to make it sound a little more impressive than it is. They're riding in it. I mean, just no different. To me, it's noteworthy that non-trained pilots or astronauts can get in a ship that is remotely operated and go into space, but making a big deal out of like the first all-female crew. Like,
look at their little.
No, I mean it's
their little outfits.
We're watching on the monitor on CBS. I mean, they're making it appear. If you didn't know any better, and you just watched the visuals and you saw the terminology, you would think that these were astronauts that were piloting this thing. They were solely responsible. They're no different than Neil Armstrong or any of these astronauts that in the past have been responsible for actually navigating these things. I don't care, but it's pretty funny. What do you?
Captions King. She's over there talking about the seatbelt. She's like, there are so many clicks.
Clearly a crew at hand. We got coming up, Bernie Sanders makes an appearance at Coachella. Yes, I kid you not. Is it any wonder Democrats are having a difficult time connecting with average people? I mean, Donald Trump showing up once again to this thunderous applause and introduction at a UFC event. And part of the discussion was, other than fighters, Trump is the only person that gets his own entrance music at these events. And everyone goes nuts. And these are, of course, just average, normal, a lot of blue-collar workers, people. And Bernie Sanders is at Coachella. I mean, a culture that is so unrelatable to the vast majority of Americans and is populated oftentimes with, very elite, white, rich kids or young people that have never really had to work a day in their lives because they are the children of billionaires. Springfield's Talk 1041, weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies throughout the day with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 71.
At the bottom of this interview with these four rich women that are going in the automated, remotely controlled spaceship up to space, and it's CBS Mornings, crew of icons, all-female Blue Origin crew, and what trip to space means to them. Do you know what it means to them? Honestly, it's nice to be rich. And I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. That is one of the fantastic things about becoming very successful is you get to have opportunities oftentimes that other people are not. And I think the privilege, and I don't say privilege, I don't, the left has managed to take the term privilege and turn it into a dirty word, but I don't think that it is or should be a dirty word. I think that if you have privileges in certain areas, earned or otherwise, that you should be very grateful for them and you should embrace them instead of just dismissing them as something that you should be ashamed of. And, that's like throwing out food in order to recognize people that are hungry. I mean, that doesn't do any good. You should be grateful for what you have. And these are individuals that have access to a lot of money, and this is one of the things that it allows them to do. I mean, there's nothing more meaningful that, hey, go to space. What does this mean to you to go to space? It means that it's one of the things I get to do because I'm very privileged and have a lot of money, which isn't a bad thing at all. Crew. I'd be embarrassed. I'd be like, listen, sort of like we played the audio in the first hour and that Washington Post journalist with Bill Maher was going on and on about, oh, everybody loves you. And he's like, stop patronizing me. I don't know you. And it's just, you should be, at some point you get embarrassed. Like, okay, we're not a crew. We're not astronauts. Let's stop pretending as if this is more than it is. We have a lot of money and that's allowing us to do a really cool thing. And I think that this is really neat. That should probably be the extent of it. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. All right, well, now I'm confused about this first all-woman crew.
Oh, yes.
So there's a Fox News story, and it says the historic flight is the first time in over 60 years that an all-female crew will visit space. So that story references that there has been a previous all-female crew. Now, I didn't know this, that in, let's see, 63, so that would have been, this must be what the reference is. There was a first woman in space, and it was a Soviet cosmonaut, Valentina Tereshkova, who flew aboard the Vostok 6 on June 16, 1963, completing 48 orbits around the Earth in nearly 71 hours. She remains the only woman to have flown solo in space. So I don't know if it's referencing that as the, which technically, yes, that would be the first all-female crew, but I don't know. I just feel like this whole presentation is very misleading. I know it's shocking that they may be trying to market this for publicity reasons, and of course you got the all-female component to it. But remember when Trump, they kept trying to, under Biden, and they'd say, oh, it's the first openly gay this, and it's like, no, actually Trump did that. Well, that was different, see, because he appointed him as opposed to Biden that got him, just these semantic issues, and I don't know, just seems just a little inauthentic. Okay, speaking of inauthentic, Coachella. Do most people know what Coachella is? Coachella is this...
It's like a large festival, music festival.
Yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's known for open drug use and sex and sort of thing. And it's also known for the very, very wealthy. I think this time around, the minimum ticket was $600.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's the cheapest individual ticket is $599. That's just to get in the gate. You don't get anything else with that. $599. Festival attendees they of course have to get to the venue, which is in the middle of the desert. Then they pay for things like parking, camping, hotels. All in all, what they find is that on average, just to attend in any sort of meaningful way, to do the bare minimum beyond just getting through the gate, it cost anywhere between $2,500 to $7,000. And of course, you could spend much, almost six figures if you really do the VIP experience. So this clearly is for the wealthy, and a lot of celebrities go to it. Now, it has waned in popularity over the last several years for numerous different reasons. In fact, there have been articles written about, how Coachella isn't what it was once upon a time and what it's evolving into. But it's basically an annual really, really rich kid place to go, or people in their, 20s, maybe early 30s. I don't know that they would get much older than that. And so this is a big gathering of the uber wealthy. So what better place to go rail on the wealthy than Coachella? I mean, here's Bernie Sanders. Here he is at Coachella. Now, rich old white guy. He's 83 years old, talking to an audience of really wealthy, privileged white people.
What does he bring?
Sorry, there was an ad before the audio here. Here we go.
This country faces some very difficult challenges. And the future of what happens to America is dependent upon your generation. Now, you can turn away and you can ignore what goes on, but if you do that, you do it at your own peril. We need you to stand up to fight for justice. Fight for economic justice, social justice, and racial justice. Now, we got a president of the United States who, I agree, he thinks that climate change is a hoax. He is dangerously wrong. And you and I are going to have to stand up to the fossil fuel industry and tell them to stop destroying this planet.
All right.
And now here's Post Malone.
That part of what the last thing he said there is about the fossil fuels. This is what kills me. The guy who owns Coachella is a guy named Philip Frederick Anschutz, and he owns all sorts of different industries, obviously entertainment. He's got newspaper, sport, but he began his massive wealth, doing what? Oil drilling. This is where the guy who owns this, he bought out his father's oil drilling company, Circle A Drilling, and earned massive returns in Wyoming. So he continued on with his father's industry, expanding it. This entire event annually is built upon fossil fuels and the selling of fossil fuels. In here, this is how ignorant these people are. They have no clue whatsoever. And so here a guy that is already massively wealthy off of the fossil fuel industry, and they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars into his pocket as owner of Coachella. And then Bernie Sanders comes along and he's like, we've got to stop the fossil fuel. And they're like, yay! It's like, you guys are funding it. These people, you know how the vast majority of those people vote? Just look at how ignorant they are. It's a farce. It is a comedy when you listen to this. If you were making a movie about how easily manipulated, Pavlovian, that was a Pavlovian response that you heard. Bernie Sanders talks about justice, and then they all scream, yay! Oh, economic justice. And then they all scream social justice. They all scream racial justice. Oh, it gets the loudest scream. It's like these little buzzwords, and it causes a Pavlovian response. It's embarrassing. And a group of people who cheered extremely loud about really sticking it to the fossil fuel industry, while this entire event is put on by someone whose wealth was built upon the fossil fuel industry. And an old rich white guy up there telling them that we need economic justice and racial justice, and they're cheering. It's like everything about that setting is written as a farce. And as I said, I think we can suspect if that group held a vote or they determined a political ideology, I think we can all guess which side of the aisle they fall on. I mean, that whole display. And from Bernie Sanders' perspective, I get so tired of people, at least Bernie Sanders, he's authentic. He's full of crap. Where does he go to rail on rich people? He goes to rich people. He finds one of the single largest gatherings of the wealthy and the rich, put on by somebody whose wealth came from the fossil fuel industry. Everything about that guy is fake. 83-year-old. Some of these young people are just such a demonstration of what is wrong to a large degree with this country.
Do you think he paid for his ticket?
Yeah, right. Oh, sure, it'll be an in-kind donation. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get paid to be there.
Oh, yeah, probably.
I mean, given what we've learned about the way that the Democrats will fundraise, this was one of the big takeaways from the Kamala Harris campaign. They will fundraise and beg people who can barely make ends meet for donations, and then they turn around and funnel those donations to their billionaire celebrity friends like Beyonce or Oprah or, whomever else it is that they want to line their pockets. That Lindy Lee, who has been a longtime Democrat fundraiser, that after the election has come out and started admitting a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, when she's been asked why now, she has said, because I realized that I had asked people, including family members, to donate money to a cause, and then I saw how it was spent. I saw that in Florida, she said, for example, when there was no chance to win Florida, they were funneling millions and millions and millions of dollars to left-wing, marketing, the companies responsible for the ads, and they were all just left-wing friends that are already millionaires, and they're taking dollars that they requested that people living paycheck to paycheck donate, and then lining the pockets of their multimillionaire, billionaire friends. Oh, the party of the working people. Oh, sure. While Bernie Sanders was at Coachella, and this perfectly illustrates the divide between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party and why it is that Republicans have increasingly been recognized as the party of the working person. You can't get a more stark cultural difference than Bernie Sanders at Coachella with a bunch of rich, elite, oftentimes spoiled and privileged white kids, and then Donald Trump at yet another UFC event.
Making the church to a standing ovation, the 47th president of the United States of America, like by UFC CEO Dana White and others, Donald J. Is there anybody else that is the lesbian? No, other than the fight, he has no music, Kid Rock starts tonight. He had one at the NCAA tournament too. He always gets a walkout. It's like a prerequisite for his coming. Give him the walkout. People love it. They do. Well, like what he runs is mixed martial arts, right? I mean, he talks about watching these fight nights when he is not in the building. And President Trump making his way to the octagon yet again for a massive UFC pay-per-view event. Gotta talk to him about the fights. He really loves fights. Oh, he loves it. Really fights. Think about this. He's at the White House watching the fights. That's crazy thought. Like, it's just crazy thought he's at the White House.
And the crowd continues screaming, and they break into chants of USA, USA, USA. And that, my friends, yeah, I mean, you look at that. There was that town hall, Bernie Sanders and Anderson Cooper, and it went viral because you had some attorney stand up and was introduced by Anderson Cooper, noting she's a Democrat, she is an attorney, and then the person immediately, oh, I'm a they, them, and then ask a question, why do you think the Democrats are losing male voters? Look around you. Can you be any more obtuse?
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 68. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 40. For your Tuesday, sunny and breezy with a high near 63. And for Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 71.
I'm telling you, during the break, we're in hysterics over here watching the coverage of this all-female crew launch.
People are losing their ever-loving minds.
Now, I will say, it almost looked like AI when it launched. It was so smooth, which I know it's obviously that way, but just the way it went, I thought, oh, are they showing a simulation before it launched?
Right.
This is, they keep referring to them as a crew. They're riding along. It's Katy Perry.
And a bunch of other rich people.
Yeah, and Gail King and some others. And so it's a remotely controlled flight, or it's automated, so that they don't, do anything. I swear to you, I kid you not, we're watching it. Oprah's there. She starts crying. She's crying. Like, what have you people deluded yourselves into believing that this is? This isn't some sort of, they make it seem like this is a historic moment, as if this is a crew of women who are astronauts who are flying this thing. They're all just sitting in there. I don't know what. Well, I had questioned. I'm surprised they're not a live stream from inside where you can see it. But Sarah pointed out they probably would have had to use Starlink in order to get that good of a connection. Of course, that would, you can't make Elon Musk look good.
They've reached the apex. Now they're experiencing weightlessness.
Let's hear some of this. Well, why aren't I hearing? Why wasn't this coming across?
Did you press the on button?
There we go.
There you go.
Is this audio for? What are they all crying? They're like scared.
Yes.
Like, I'm so sorry I did this. I think that's just the crowd. They must not be saying anything.
So peaceful.
Is
it coming back down?
Looks like. Was it supposed to be?
I think so. Boy, how these go fast.
And a great piece of news there. All astronauts are back in their seats. You see the two craft now that on the bottom, that is the rocket that is screaming back down to Earth. The rocket will beat the capsule to its landing spot just 2 miles north of where it's taken off from. At the top of the rocket, you see a couple of fins that are popped out. Those are to stabilize the rocket as it comes into land. Shortly thereafter, you will see the drag brakes that deploy that will cut the speed of the rocket in half. And then in the last moments,
and there it is. We can see it from the stage.
There comes the rocket down. It's going to relight its engine. We also see a sonic boom. We're going to hear that shortly here.
And remember, this is something that had never been done before until just a few years ago. Truly the stuff of science fiction that we've got in just seconds.
Drag brakes.
That's pretty amazing.
I don't know why, but that made me really nervous.
Well, that's the point in which, as it lands there, if something were going to, I suppose something could go wrong at any, but.
Here's your touchdown. Welcome home.
Welcome home. Okay, we're gone 3 minutes.
It's the perfect landing, right?
I hope we get Oprah again.
Right on target.
Yeah, Oprah weeping.
This kind of creates this dramatic cloud that gets.
If you were able to go on,
nope.
Yeah, me neither.
No.
Not in a minute. Nope. Wouldn't do it.
Mm-mm.
If I had some sort of terminal disease or something, maybe I still wouldn't do it. I'm too much of a scaredy cat to do something like that. Are they already disembarking? So I wonder how long they got to do the weightlessness. I guess it just goes up and then it just stops, and then gravity brings it back down.
The flight was just like 20 minutes.
Was it? No, it wasn't that long.
I'm
no,
pretty
I think
sure.
it took off at the bottom of the hour. It was when It was. I think when we went to. I think when we went to traffic. Oh wait, that's the part they're in. Okay, so the rocket part. It's a good thing you all are listening, because we clearly have a grasp on exactly what is going on with this space mission. The rocket part came back down successfully, so the that is on top. That's what's landing now. Let's see here.
So to a nice smooth 10, 15 miles an hour. They are cruising back home.
It was close. 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Approximately 12
close.
20. It's relatively close.
Okay.
Estimated.
I have gone through all of the training. They put you in the capsule that simulates all of this, including the sounds. And when you hear the motors of the parachutes pop out, that is the best moment in flight.
Because Blue Origin does everything they can.
What if they open it and it's just the entire capsule is covered in vomit? Like, it's just throw up everywhere. They come out and they're slipping around and falling and
The seatbelt.
yeah, like why now? Why is it customary that people in hazmat suits come out? Well, no, there just happens to be a lot of vomit in this particular capsule at this time. Two are passed out, one screaming. Oh, total and complete panic. It looks like it's about to land there. All right, so there you have it, folks. Live coverage. What was this blue whatever? Blue Origin. Historic flight in which some gals who have a lot of money sat and rode in it. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I love this. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Post-interview, now that you're back on Earth, what are you going to do? They're going to Coachella. Yeah, now that you're back on Earth. We thought it would be. There's a lot of humorous ways this could play out. It opens up, one comes out alive, the rest are dead for some reason, strangled with their seatbelts. They just went mad, the 3 minutes in space.
One of them's blabbing about aliens.
Yeah. Just
You are not going to believe what we saw up there.
One goes mute, won't even speak.
They haven't come out yet.
I know. Well,
what's going on?
Probably procedure. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, premier landscaping service in the area. And by premier, listen, a lot of industries will tout themselves as the best, premier. We're great. Words are words, but actual results are results. And listen, you can do it yourself, but it's not going to be as good of a job. I mean, unless this is something you do for a living. I can tell right now what we have when we bought our home. It was a DIY job. And you could tell it because there's unevenness with some of the patio pavers. And it's just grass growing up in between. And it was something that someone did on their own. And I know what I've worked with the folks at Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor on what is going to be ours and probably in a few weeks be able to start on mine. It's not something that in 10 years you're going to look at it and say, oh, that's a DIY job. And it may take you a little bit longer than if you hire somebody who does landscaping. But, yeah, they can also put you in a little patio if you want, and they may be able to get to it in a few days. But That's not the area of expertise. That's more of you're paying someone to do a DIY. If you want the absolute best, whether it's for your business or your home, for entertainment purposes, and not just patios, but pretty much anything you can imagine with lighting schemes, water schemes, just seating areas, lounging areas, built-in fire pits. That's what you're going to get with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. You can find them at hunterhardscapes.com, also ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. The Democrats they're demonstrating they don't have a clear message on the Trump tariffs, and part of the reason is because it's kind of working right now. We were told when Trump, and none of this was a surprise, that he's like, hey, all right, today's the day, liberate. He made a big deal of it. Tariffs on everyone. Hey, but if anyone decides that you want to rework things, come let us know. Okay? So this is the way it's going to work. This is the new normal unless you want to change things. Okay? And so he made the announcement, and then the stock market goes way down. People are panicking. Well, within 24 hours, it had like one of the biggest spikes that we had seen in years. And then when the whole week was said and done, everything pretty much leveled off to where it was as nothing had ever even happened. The Democrats had banked on this massive crash of the stock market and then this absolute panic, and Trump like, never mind, forget it, nobody gets tariffs, everything's fine, let's go back to normal, or that it would just continue to bring us into chaos so that they could say, see, it didn't work. This is what they were hoping for. The problem that they're having is everything that, like, if Trump were to open an envelope and say this is what we would consider success, so far it's playing out. And that is a stabilized stock market, and every country except for China, who's the biggest problem, saying, guess whose side we're on? The United States. And now over 150 different countries that have said, okay, we don't like this new normal with the tariffs, so we want to come to the negotiating table and work out something that the United States deems to be positive enough for the United States that we can get rid of these tariffs that have been put upon us. Like, all of this is exactly for the purposes that that Trump and his people have set out. So that leaves Democrats with the inability to say, oh, look, it's been a massive failure. So what do they do instead? Pretend as if Donald Trump is somehow benefiting through insider trading off of this. That, okay, so that's the route they have to go. Okay, well, maybe it's working, but it was corrupt, the way he's doing it. This is a similar tactic that was used when it came to Doge. Well, okay, sure. I mean, we're not necessarily against this or that, but it's the process. And it's because they can't argue against the results. Obviously, there's a long way to go, and that is the whole point of this, is long-term stable results instead of just, here, we're going to tinker a little bit over here, tinker a little bit over there, so that in the end, the global relationship other countries have with the United States goes largely unchanged, but for just a little industry here and a little industry there. So you've got Elizabeth Warren said Sunday on CNN's State of the Union that President Donald Trump's tariffs were loaded with chaos and corruption. Jake Tapper saying less than a year ago, you praised Biden's decision to slap tariffs on Chinese good because he was, in your words, quoted, standing up for American workers, unquote. So specifically on China, can you detail what exactly you would be doing differently than President Trump? To which Elizabeth Warren said, let's keep in mind tariffs can be an important tool in the toolbox. Donald Trump has imposed a tariff on everyone, everywhere, on all products. That's a 10% tariff, of course. It was much higher earlier in the week. And now in this trade war with China that basically tried to shut down all of trade. And then right out in plain view, as if the chaos wasn't enough, he adds a nice layer of corruption for everyone to see. And that is a specific deal for his CEO donor. And that is an exception to the China deal for iPhones. Look, here's the problem. So, in other words, I mean, Democrats. The whole point of this is what is happening. So if Trump doesn't or when Trump does put tariffs on something, that is horrible and wrong. But when he doesn't, well, he's just rewarding his donors. So in other words, what you may notice, it doesn't matter what Donald Trump does, they will figure out a way to tell you that it's wrong. He imposes tariffs, it's wrong. He doesn't impose tariffs, it's wrong. If the economy goes south, that's proof that immediately this was wrong. If it doesn't go south, well, there must be insider trading going on. It doesn't matter. This is why you cannot listen to these people. You know, it's detrimental to this country that the political opposition to Donald Trump is unable or incapable or unwilling to have actual intelligent conversations about this stuff. Because in a society, you really truly benefit from intelligent people taking any particular situation and debating it in an intelligent way, coming from a place not of partisan politics, but of trying to, really evaluate, is this good? Could it be better? This was, one of the thoughts of the founders and the freedom of speech, recognizing that we must be able to have these intellectual debates about issues in order to improve ourselves. But we get denied that because the political opposition to Donald Trump, they talk nonsense. I mean, it's just, it's fluff. It is absent of any substance whatsoever. So ironically, the very people who want to put up some political opposition to Donald Trump, they don't actually offer any meaningful opposition. And I happen to believe that having meaningful opposition would actually be a good thing. Not because Donald Trump is wrong and needs somebody to take him down, but because it just is beneficial to have smart people in a room that may have different perspectives on things, that can discuss them, debate them, and then come to a conclusion that leads to a better outcome because of that debate. But the Democrats are just incapable of providing anything of substance into the debate. Senator Booker, who, of course, is running for president, that was his little long speech that he gave in the Senate was a demonstration of that. And he was asked specifically, as the Democrats run around talking about, there's clearly insider trading and corruption here. Okay, so what evidence is there?
Do you believe that Democrats have any real evidence that anyone in the administration profited off of the president's policies and announcements, or is this just a fishing expedition?
Here's the problem with Donald Trump and congressional Republicans is our whole system was designed to have checks and balances. Now, Trump has designed an administration like none we've ever seen before. He is attacking the very agencies that are supposed to have independent oversight of these kind of actions. So we see him hiring people based upon their loyalty, not based upon their expertise. The real group that should be holding investigations and accountability and even just oversight is Congress.
But is there any evidence? Do you think there's any evidence that anyone profited off of these tariffs?
There is enough of an offense here. There's enough smoke here that should demand congressional hearings.
In other words, no. You noticed to what great lengths he went to not even use the word evidence? Because of course there's not. I love the fact that there is an actual app, that is used by people in order to pick stocks, that is based solely off of what stock purchases is Nancy Pelosi making, because everyone knows that she is so absolutely corrupt and that she has utilized information that other people don't have the ability to access, that every time she picks stocks, it's amazing how that they go up in value. Every time she sells, that means it's going to go under. There's an actual app that is used to mimic her purchases because everyone knows that there is, quote, insider trading, if you want to refer to it as that, going on with her. Oh, but now all of a sudden, it's more of the same. And it's total BS. And they know it. And this is why, even when asked directly, but do you have any evidence? Do you have any? Well, now here's the problem, checks and balances and so forth. By the way, the checks and balances, Congress, you want to know why it is that Democrats aren't able to do anything other than, keep pretending that there's some sort of corruption here? Because the executive branch has this authority that was given to them by Congress. Given to it by Congress. This is why Biden was able to put on tariffs, and previous administrations were. It's just as usual, because it's Donald Trump, they don't want it to be done. And so they're going to pretend as if he's using some authority he hasn't been given. And while there are valid questions about the constitutionality of this, they haven't been challenged in court by anyone because everyone's been fine with this. And the reason everyone's been fine with this is because Congress gave authority to the executive branch to do this. It would be nice if there was just some people in the Democrat Party that could put up even what appears to be intellectual observations regarding this entire tariff situation. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. I want to read a review from my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Jana wrote, "We are incredibly thankful for Josh. He came out immediately after a huge hailstorm to confirm roof damage. He worked very diligently with our insurance adjuster to validate the need for a new roof, which we got approved, all thanks to him. He's extremely knowledgeable. He took the time to thoroughly answer all of our questions and even got the roofing crew out ahead of schedule. Pyramid was a dream to work with and also has one of the best warranties around. Thank you so much." And that's what you get with the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, with the recent storms that rolled through the Ozarks, if you did experience any type of roof damage, I highly recommend Josh and his team. They do free roof inspections, so if it is time to schedule one of those, just give Josh a call today, and you can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, everyone. That's the show. I think it was a good one. Oh, there. Oh my gosh.
She's doing push-ups. Gail.
Did you see her? She picked up dirt and held it. I finally.
I
back.
thought she was doing a push-up.
Well, I don't know. I didn't see that part. I just saw her holding dirt in her hands, and I mean, look at the way they're. I listen. It's a cool thing to sit in a rocket and fly up into space for a couple minutes and come back, but the way that they are portraying this thing is just it is cartoonish. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.